Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and an alien being has fallen from the sky, hurtling past HLJ's monitoring satellites and landing on my desk. Continuing my obsession with Sentinel, this is the Riobot rendition of Detonator Orgun's Earth form. Orgun hails from a trio of OVAs and certainly does look like he and Tekkaman had the same mother. However, there is no Riobot Tekkaman, so F that guy! Let's Orgun. This sculpt looks more or less spot on to what I saw when I watched the 3-part OVA through a grainy streaming service, which is my way of saying that I think it looks really good, and I cannot tell you what nuanced inaccuracies there may be when compared to animation cells or line art. If anything, Riobot Orgun's shoulder pads are perhaps slightly less crazy huge, and his proportions are perhaps slightly more humanized and streamlined. While Orgun is a very blanched cybernetic super warrior, the layered use of various gray tones with the sleek white finish on most of his components breathes a lot of life into the figure. Paint apps are clean, bare plastic has a very pleasant finish, and the sparse appearance of other colors adds sharp pops to the overall look. I also want to call out the really crisp and layered lines of application around Orgun's yellow optics. This creates a visual focus effect that only barely falls a little short due to the somewhat dull hue of the yellow paint. I wish those eyes were brighter to really burst forward from the darker lining around them. Let's talk hands! Orgun has fists, and they can be ball joint popped and replaced with splayed open hands. While you're in the middle of popping hands on and off, his wrist cuffs can be swapped out for slightly more dangerous ones, which have deployed the Orgun cutters. These look really cool, but they're also really sharp and not made of a very flexible plastic, so be careful with them. The third hand option is a pair of gripping hands, which are made to hold the Orgun lancers. These beastly blades are surprisingly thick and feel pretty durable, all things considered. And if you like, one handle can be removed to make the lancer a double lancer, which is properly large and ridiculously anime. But hey, let's talk legit ridiculous. This antimatter bullet injection machine wasn't even in the OVA series. It's apparently an original weapon devised by Hideki Kakinuma, Detonator Orgun's writer, and it looks cool. I particularly like the targeting readout and subtle green ammo canister glow. Unfortunately, despite having a hand sculpted onto the grip, this cannon is a bit of a jerk to mount onto Orgun. Oddly enough, popping the right shoulder pad on and off is the least tricky part. Getting things lined up to pop the wrist into place while keeping the cuff piece from falling off can get a little goofy, and the end result is okay? I respect its intent, but it ends up feeling rather unnecessary, and a little limited in posing options. It also really likes bumping against Orgun's ear crests, which I find a little scary. Finally, a Sentinel display stand is included in the box. There's no hidden peg hole on Orgun's body that I can find, so you'll have to use the grip claw attachment on the stand's armature, or find the hidden peg hole if there is one. It's functional and inoffensive, but I do have much warmer feelings for integrated stand connections over these claw-style setups, so maybe there really is a hidden peg hole on there somewhere. Come on, please. Probably there isn't. And you know, I'll probably continue breathing and continue living and move on with my life. So this one's not a Blodia, but it's still Sentinel, and he's still got some really cool engineering, and I'm going to just spaz out a little bit over that for the next little while. Please bear with me. Let's start with his head. These things, by the way, they feel like they might snap off if you drop them on them, so be careful with them. Unfortunately, they are also the easiest handle by which to start making him do this. So he's got a ball joint at the top of his neck. If you look inside here, his neck at the base can rock around as well, so there's two ball joints. One at the bottom, one at the top. All of the oomph that you need. And if you want to shoot a laser out of his forehead, blam. He can shoot lasers out of his forehead. It's P something or other. I watched the OVA. I actually waited to watch the OVA because I was like, I gotta know what that thing in his forehead is. And then I saw it, and it wasn't as cool as I thought it might be. Another gimmick this guy has is in his chest, where you can totally just Guyver out. And boom, he can inhale a pilot, or he can end a series, whichever you want. There's no real gimmick here other than the fact that those flaps open, but I think that looks really good when they're open. Full frontal... Anyway, it's pretty easy to open them up, pretty easy to close them up, and it's not like they really can bang open because they're so tight to his torso, so when you're moving one of his many torso joints around, nothing's going to happen. However, it is pretty easy to bump his forehead, so careful. As for his torso, there's a ball joint at the bottom here by the waist, and then there is another joint on the ab area, another ball joint, and here's something cool. Here's something that's going to get me going. When you move this, look at this, you reveal some spinal cord detail, and there's little bit of a hinge on this blue part to allow it to stay cupped tightly to Orgun's body while you're doing this. And also, if you look up inside there, you can see all kinds of workings and things. Anyway, no limbs involved. I already really like this guy's engineering. Let's talk about limbs. Let's talk about arms. At the very base here is a set of hinges that allow his whole arm assembly to move up like that, or forwards and backwards like this. So those are the two hinges inside there, allowing for this. The shoulder pad is on its own ball joint, and it can be popped off if you really want to, but it moves independently, while his shoulder here is on a separate ball joint. The ball joints have such a nice, smooth tolerance. I rarely find things bang together. Usually if something bumps into something, the thing that got bumped into will move. As for bicep, there's a full-on ball joint there. So you got a swivel, you get a little bit of tilt if you want. This guy's a very organic robot, so you can get a bit of curvature in his arm if you so desire. His elbows are double-jointed. There's some geared-looking detail inside on either end. And his wrists are double-jointed. There's a ball joint at the base, which pops out for hand swaps, and all the hands have got one of them Figma-style joints in there, so you can have the fist not only wiggle, but straight up curve in like that, too. So, lots of arm jointage. Speaking of hips, it's I think, a ball socket. Yeah, it's a ball socket hip joint in here. And while you're moving that around, this piece can wiggle up and down, basically to get out of the way of whatever's going on. Here you can see there it's kind of riding up as it hits the pelvis. And it also just means that it stays nice and close and keeps everything looking smooth and organic while you're doing things. There is a thigh swivel. Down here at the knee, there's one of those kind of Sentinel knee systems where when you bend it, just like everything happens while you're bending it. I think it's kind of cool. It's not revealing like huge amounts of tech detail, but it's allowing for like a sick double-jointed knee. And there are 3 hinges at work here. One here, one here, one here. And they all just very happily work in tandem. His ankles, there's a big ball socket thing down here at the top of the foot, where the whole ankle assembly can move around. This thing can move a little bit separately for when you're doing things like this. His toe has got a really surprisingly hard ratchet. So if you're going to do like a sort of walking forward stance, this thing will not slip. Like, it'll stay weight-bearingly solid on the ground. And I think that given how this guy is not really using ratchets anywhere else, it's kind of cool that the hardest ratchet is down here where the most weight will be borne. A lot of toe joints are just straight up friction, and a lot of toe joints work, but this is like an extra little bit of safety just to make sure if you do have this guy using his toe joint for whatever reason, he stays pretty solid. There's a tilt, and then in the inside here, there's a separate tilt you can see here. Underneath the ball joint, and that bit that popped off, that front armor foot cover thing, pops back in pretty easily. That's the first time I've actually popped that off. You can see how it would happen, though. There's like sticky uppy bits that are going to bump into the calves. This dude's posability is Sentinel badass. It's not as like mechanical and chunky as the Blodia, but there's still plenty going on. And like the Blodia, all of this engineering still pretty much works in tandem, works together. Nothing really collides calamitously. If things bump into each other, they kind of just get out of each other's way. And then that one time, the thing down there on his foot popped off, but it goes back on easily. This guy's a joy to pose, and he feels really good to pose, too. All of his tolerances are great. I'm really digging Orgun. He's not the die-cast plastic chunky ratchety mix that the Blodia was. He's not as just like grab and play friendly, but he feels really good, especially given how he feels also so thin and lithe, and usually I associate that with kid gloves. This thing, I don't feel like I need to treat it with kid gloves. I just have to not snap the antennas off of his ears. So, well done, Riobot Detonator Orgun. You're fun to pose. Riobot Orgun is a labor of love dedicated to a 3-part OVA that's easily lost in the shadow of Tekkaman. The figure is fantastically designed with both a solid core of engineering and proportion and a sleek topping of sharp sculpting and color work. His primary accessories are all quite well done, and the silly antimatter bullet injection cannon has an endearing allure despite its functional limitations and arguably unnecessary nature. However, if leaving the cannon out of the package could have gotten this guy's basic price down by like $10, I think that would have been a worthy sacrifice. Riobot Orgun released at a cost of around $100, though at the time of this recording you can find him for $10 to $20 under that if you bide your time and wait for the right moment. That is a hard bite to take for a figure that lacks the die-cast draw that was found in Sentinel's Riobot Blodia. With Orgun, you're paying a premium for creative engineering and a notable level of visual polish. That, and I'm sure the production run wasn't too large, with Orgun's slightly more obscure level of popularity and awareness. This is definitely a piece for fans of Detonator Orgun, first and foremost. Though, speaking as someone who checked out the show because of the quality of the figure, this is a Riobot worthy of consideration for any fan of robot toys. Sentinel's mechanical engineering continues to fascinate me to the point of considering releases of theirs whose franchises I know little to nothing about. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I also recommend checking out the Detonator Orgun OVA if you dig them anime robots. I couldn't deal with the English dub, but once I found a means to watch it with subtitles on, I had a good time with the 3-episode series. And all those snarly dudes all screaming like, "Orgun!"